So hi, I'm Nadia, and I wanted to talk about how to deal with the temptation of doing a full rewrite. So the credit for the title of this talk goes to classical programmer paintings Tumblr, which is quite fun, and because of this, all of it will be illustrated by classical paintings. So, imagine a scene. It's late at night and you're going through some obscure line of code, trying to finish up with this one feature that was supposed to be easy, but some obscure web of dependencies is sucking you deeper and deeper. And as you venture into an unknown land, marked only by some sarcastic comments of developers that went there before you, you end up sitting in despair, and suddenly a bright thought comes into your mind. What if we could do a full rewrite? To burn it all to the ground and start from scratch. To have a fresh start, a new start, and do everything better this time. Because doing it once, you would think that you already know all of the business cases, so doing it again will be much easier, because you've learned things, right? But really, I'm not here to give you any answers, because smarter people have debated these age-old questions for much longer than 5 minutes. And there's still no consensus. There's only individual opinions. What I can do is to share some of tips which I wish I knew before I started doing both approaches. So, a first tip is quite simple. If you're preparing a backlog for doing a full rewrite, do include this one rule in your definition of ready. Because without it, it might seem obvious, but without it, pretty soon all of our specs look something like the price gets calculated just like in the old system, which we thought was self-evident, or could be read up from the old code. But if the old code would be readable, then we wouldn't need to have a rewrite in the first place. The second tip is to take an honest look in the mirror, because the tech debt didn't create itself. And without understanding why the code is as bad as it is, you cannot hope to fix it. And without any real organizational changes, you risk just making the same mistakes all over again. And of course, doing a rewrite is a really expensive operation, and that's why it's mostly a business decision and might even be out of your hands completely. So does it mean that if the business says no, it's the end and the end of all hope? Of course not, because no code is all so old and so ugly that it cannot be helped. Unless it's written in CoffeeScript, then by all means end its misery. But for all other cases, there exists the hard and ugly path of doing a refactor. And by this, I mean improving your existing code base to get rid of the tech debt eventually. Yes, it's far less glorious work, but fixing things is always much more tedious than just throwing them away and replacing them. But in the age of talking about zero waste policy, we should start talking about not wasting that much code. Because on conferences, we paint this false picture that everybody has a super clean code and they are using super fresh technologies, which can leave people who are still dealing with fixing some old code feeling left out, bitter and excluded. Which is no wonder that they start hearing the voice of a green fairy telling them that the only way is to rewrite the whole code. Of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing a rewrite, because sometimes keeping the cost of maintaining the old code could be devastating, so you should weigh your options carefully, and maybe a rewrite really is a better choice. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and not just because there's a new framework in town. But to all of you who are still struggling with old code and remain true to it, and you choose to walk the hard and ugly path, I salute you, because this kind of work, this kind of day-to-day work is how things are getting better. Thank you.